It also has, they have feet on them, so you can slide a plate right under there and just scrape stuff right up onto the plate without making the drippy transfer mess, you know, that happens. So that's the idea behind the feet. They also have little rubber feet on the bottom of them, so they kind of hold onto the counter for you, so they're not sliding all over the place, which is nice. So cutting boards are key to what you're, you know, keeping your knife sharp. And then we already talked about sharpening. So let's talk finally about the edges, and then we'll get into the fun. So there's 3 different types of edges, 2 traditional, and then there's the Cutco edge. So most knives will have a straight edge blade. And again, that straight edge, every time it comes in contact with the cutting surface, it folds over, it bends, and you're constantly fighting that edge to keep it sharp. So these you literally have to sharpen constantly. Now it does make a nice clean cut, but they're just really high maintenance. The serrated edge is a series of teeth, and these are the ones that rip and tear through food. So these will cut like a saw, and if you've ever cut a chicken breast, like a cooked chicken breast with a serrated steak knife, it just shreds it apart, right? The teeth are pulling until the fiber breaks. The problem with that is, somebody's jamming, is that this thing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Oh, okay, now we're back in business. So with these, they now become little rounded off nubs that just kind of glide across your food. And you cannot sharpen a serrated edge. They stay sharp for 1 to 3 years, and then they cannot be resharpened. You have to replace them. It's a concept called planned obsolescence. It's made to break down, so you have to buy another one eventually. And then there's the Cutco edge. Cutco's edge looks like a serration because it has teeth. But our teeth aren't doing the cutting. What happens with us is we have 3 blades that are inside. So if you guys look at your handout, you can see how we've kind of blown this up for you. But there are blades cutting forward, backward, and straight down through all of these little crevices. And as the teeth on our knives round off and wear down, there's still plenty of blade left to cut. So these cuts clean like a straight edge, but they don't dull and wear like a straight edge. So we always do this fun little, what we call the mug test. And many of you guys have seen this, and some of you have seen it a bunch of times. We're going to do it again because it's fun. And it's really cool how it shows the effectiveness of the edge. So this is a Henkel's straight edge knife. Henkel's is one of the #1 brands in the world. They're awesome. But you have to sharpen them all the time. So this is rope. We use rope because it's fibrous like chicken and fruits and vegetables. And I sharpen this knife up, so it should cut really nicely. So it cuts in about a half a stroke with a straight edge when it's nice and sharp. Cutco's double D edge cuts in about a half a stroke. Nice and clean. Neither of them ripped and tore. Everything's nice and clean cut, right? So here's the difference. I'm going to use this really dirty glass. So I'm going to take 8 slices on a glass cutting board, for example. That's why we use this, just to simulate. And then see what happened to the edge. So that one took me 9 after just 8 slices in between sharpenings. If I use it 7 more times, $20. So the more I use it, the worse and worse it gets. Now I can sharpen it back up, and with this sharpener, what you'll see, by the way, is pieces of the steel that have flattened out are now peeling off. For those of you that are up here, can you see the little shavings in there? So it's peeling off now those flat parts of the blade. And because I cut on glass, it really dulled the heck out of it, as you guys saw. But after just a couple seconds, I can get the edge right back on there. So that's how awesome this thing is. It puts the edge right back on there, but you see how fast they dull in between sharpenings if you don't sharpen them all the time. Cutco's edge, again, is a series of 3 edges tucked up inside here. So I could sit here all day long and do this, and the cutting edges are not hitting anything that can dull them. The cutting edges are suspended up in the air. So this is still going to cut the exact same way, and I could sit there literally all day and do that, and it's still going to cut for years and years and years. That's the beauty of that Cutco edge. Stays sharp for 7 to 10 years in between sharpenings, and then we sharpen it for free as part of our forever guarantee. So that's why people love Cutco, because it's just low maintenance. You don't have to deal with any of that stuff.
How do you sharpen the interior?
Well, there are,
It's got edges, I mean, it's got points. How do you get inside the points?
the way that we sharpen them here, the first thing that happens from hitting the cutting surfaces is the teeth bend over sideways and they form burrs that are sticking out. And that just sticks to your food basically, and it kind of holds the blades up. So here locally what we do is we remove those burrs. We have a flat stone and we just take and we remove all those burrs, which frees the blades back up. The blades will cut until they wear all the way up into to where the blades are basically gone. That's when we send them to the factory. They recut the edge on it, just like brand new, and you have a brand new edge for another 7 to 10 years. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? And by the way, how many of you guys have done that, and it's amazing when it comes back from the factory, isn't it? It's like completely different. It's crazy. You didn't even really know your knives were dull until you had them sharpened. It's like, whoa, what was I missing? So that's the beauty of the Cutco Double D edge there. And then the last part here is just the Cutco Forever Guarantee. So our guarantee has 4 basic points. The first part is performance, which covers all wear and tear and defects. So if anything chips or cracks or breaks or rusts or melts, any of that kind of stuff, we fix or replace it for free. Sharpness, just bring them to the store or send them to the factory. It's free forever. If you utilize the store, we take care of all the cost. All you have to do is drop them off and pick them up. If you send them yourself, you just have to pay for shipping. You don't have to pay for the sharpening, but you still have to pay for the shipping. The service agreement for unconventional use. So if something has been determined to have been used for something other than its intended purpose, the company reserves the right to charge 50% to replace it. So they don't always do this. In fact, they rarely do it. But if somebody is a habitual abuser, then they may eventually start saying, hey, why do you keep breaking all your table knives? I don't understand. Quit using my screwdrivers. We're going to charge a half from now on. So if it's unconventional use, they might give you a call. And then 15-day unconditional money-back guarantee. If you're not 100% satisfied with your Cutco purchase, you can return it to the store for a full refund, and then you have 90 days to exchange anything. All right. So just the basics there of what we got going on. Okay. So now let's get to the fun part here. If you guys pick up the knife that's in front of you, there are 2 different style knives that you have. Whoops. Okay. So some of you have the French style. Some of you have the French style, which is the one that looks like that. Some of you have the Santoku style, which is the wider one. Okay? By the way, we're going to all use both of them. We're going to switch halfway through, so this is on purpose, so don't worry. The other thing is, try to stay with me. I know everybody goes crazy when we start playing, but try to stay with me. There is a rhyme and reason to what I'm doing, okay? So regardless of which knife you have, we're going to start with that one first, whichever one's in front of you. The difference between these 2 styles, by the way, I guess we're doing chairs. Next time we'll set up chairs because these tables are so low. Sorry about that. Live and learn. Thank you, ladies, for helping out. Does anybody else want to grab a chair while we're kind of in a break? We're in limbo a little.
Do you want this chair when we're done?
How are you?
Good, how are you?
So are you a little chef? You like cooking? Have you been using knives for a little while?
Whenever I have to.
It's like us.
Hey, I feel the same way. Okay. Okay. All right. Shh. Let me get your attention again. I love how well that works. Okay. So let's talk about real quickly the 2 different types of knives before we get into this, because you're gonna notice a difference. And the reason I want you to use both of them is because I want you to understand, appreciate the difference. So the French knife, which is this one here, it has the radius where it rocks. It's called the radius, and you see how it rocks very early on in the process, right? So the blade, the radius is the part right up here where it rocks. So this one curves, And then after it curves, it's pretty much a straight flat edge. So this knife, you don't want to move a lot back and forth on the cutting board because you're dulling it, as we just talked about, right? So this knife is designed for chopping. It's also, if I'm going to slice with it, they tell you what they call a high cut. So here's one of the common things people do when they, and this is again what I used to do, is I would put the knife like this and I would just kind of force it down. And what happens is a lot of time, that was pretty lucky, but usually it ends up all crazy and you end up with a big thing and a little thing and it's never straight and clean. So for two reasons, they want you to do what's called a high cut. So with this knife, you take and you hold the blade up like this, and all you're going to use is basically the very tip of the knife. So I'm not dulling the whole knife by rubbing it on the cutting board, I'm just holding the knife up like this. I also have a lot more control over where the knife is going when I do it like that. So I can get two fairly even slices. So that's what they want you to do with this knife. It's called a high cut. You hold the blade up, and then when you're chopping, you always keep the food at the back third of the blade. Another mistake people make is they cut with the food up at the front of the blade. Yeah. Well, look how high I have to lift the blade to get to the food. Here, I barely have to lift it off the surface. So I have a lot more control with the food back here. I'm less likely to cut myself. I hear chopping. Shh, stop it. Everybody's supposed to be watching. Pay attention. All right? So you keep the food toward the back of the blade, and all you do is just kind of lift the blade up and put it back down. Now, one of the other very important things is you don't want to feed the knife, okay? If you're feeding things into the knife, what accidentally may you feed the knife?
Fingers.
Yeah, that would be bad. So you don't want to feed the knife. The knife kind of moves over the course of what I'm doing here.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On TV, every professional chef that's out there does this with their fingers
Yep.
on whatever they're cutting.
Yes.
And they have that blade right next to their fingers.
Absolutely.
And I don't understand how they do it, because I'd cut my finger in a heartbeat.
The way you do it, well, the reason why that works so well is because what they're doing is they're curling their fingers up like this, and then when the blade is up against it, the blade never gets high enough to hit anything but the food.
See, you don't see that on TV.
Well, because they don't do this because it's awkward. You see how awkward this is?
Yeah. You think Rachel Ray's magic.
Right. No, so yeah, when you've got the feel for it, I can look all around the room and I'm chopping like crazy because I know what's happening. I can feel the knife on my fingers, on my knuckle.
So
but
you
it
keep the
never
knife
gets,
at least about an inch away from your finger.
the knife is resting against my knuckle, but my fingers are tucked back underneath. So
But the preferred way is not to use the knuckles.
no, then your knuckles whenever they're doing that, your knuckles against the blade.
And what you do is, you're away from it?
No, it's right. It's right there.
Oh, you're doing the same thing?
I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
my
okay,
knuckle-
I see, okay.
My knuckle, but the blade doesn't go up high enough
To cut your
to ever
finger,
cut anything.
other
My
than
fingers
the,
are
other than
tucked
the
back.
product, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
For the produce.
So you guys see what he's talking about, the whole claw thing? Okay? I couldn't care less about the claw thing, by the way. All I want you to do is not cut your other hand. That's the most important thing. What do you do with your other hand? No blood. That's all that matters, right? Okay?
I agree.
So I don't care how you hold it. If you want to practice that, go for it. Just be careful. So what I just showed you guys is what's called the rock chop. Okay? So again, I'm going to cut this down the middle. I'm going to cut it down the middle again. And then what I'm going to do is take one of these and I'm going to practice rocking up and down. That's all this is. It's called the rock chop. And you don't have to push hard. You don't have to slam the knife into the cutting board. You also don't have to do this where you're trying to push the food away.
And you don't have to use your knuckles.
You don't have to.
Okay.
I usually don't. I hold it like that, but then I keep my hand back, and when it gets closer,
Okay.
I'm also not a chef. So I'm learning like you guys learn. I learned this like you guys are learning. Okay, so the rock chop is the first one that we're going to practice here. Now that's with the French knife. With the Santoku or the Japanese style blade, this one rocks in the middle. So this one's like a teeter-totter. You see how it goes back and forth? So this one is rounded in the middle as opposed to at the end. So when you slice with this one, check it out. When I go to slice with this one, I don't have to hold the blade up because it naturally does that. It naturally does the high cut because of the shape of it. So this one, most people find it a little bit easier to do the slicing because you don't have to hold the blade up like that. The same basic philosophy, I want to keep the food at the back of the knife and just chop and dice. just chop and dice, okay? So this is all about, it's all about technique, not speed. The speed will come over time, all right? So I know you see him on TV going 300 miles an hour and you want to be that guy or girl. Not today, okay? Please don't be that person today. If you've already got some skills and you know how to do that, go for it. I don't care. But I don't want you to try to do that if this is one of your first times at these classes, because it's not about speed, it's all about the technique. What I find when people start going too fast is they end up not cutting all the way through because they're trying to do fast and not proper, okay? So again, take your time and just let it hit the cutting board. The knife has to go all the way through, okay? All right, so the first chop that we're going to do is we want to do the rock chop. The second thing that we're going to do after we do the rock chop, and you've got it broken down into pieces like this, the second chop that we're going to teach is called the cross chop. And all you do is you basically crisscross and scrape the food back into the middle, and you're crisscrossing back and forth. So this is onions and celery and garlic and anything that I want to mince down into little pieces. I'm going to do this cross chop. If you're doing a salsa and you've got to cut up cilantro, or if you're doing herbs, this is the way to do it, and it just keeps breaking it down.
So
Now,
is that okay to slide it? Yeah.
yes,
Is that both knives?
we're going to do it with both. Yes.
No, I mean,
So
you do that technique with both knives, that's what I'm asking.
yeah, I haven't. Time out. Don't. Or nobody should be doing anything after watching.
No, no,
So hang
I'm
on.
just asking.
Yes,
you.
yeah.
That
I'm gonna
technique
give you
with
instructions
both
of everything I
knives.
want you to do to make it simple. So the first chop is the rock chop. So you're gonna do this one, and then once you get it broken down, we're gonna crisscross back and forth. So here's what I want you to do. Okay. Underneath your seats, by the way, there's a bucket. So we can put everything after we're cutting. We can put everything in there, and anybody wants to take it home for their chickens or for their compost or whatever, we're gonna let everybody take the stuff home with them, so we're not just wasting it. So here's what I want everybody to do. Okay. So with whichever knife's in front of you, everybody has one piece of celery, so we need to save half of this for the other knife. So the first thing I want you to do is take your knife and slice it down the middle, and then put half of it to the side, and then do your rock chop with this one, and then do your cross chop once you get it broken down. On your one piece of celery, cut it in half, and then save half of it for the other knife once we switch. We have first aid, by the way, if anybody does cut themselves. It also, I'm going to recommend everybody stand back up for this part because it's really hard to do this stuff seated. You can do what you want, but I'm going to recommend you stand. Remember, guys, use the back of the blade. She can do that same thing with the smaller knife. Let her practice with the little one first, I would. There you go. Right before I said it, see, I figured it out. Okay, nice job there. It'll probably blow some price cards and stuff. So it'll just. Okay, well, never mind. I'll just turn my head.
Really? Handle my potato.
The point never comes up. There you go.
Can you do that?
There you go. There you go.
First time?
You got it. You got it.
Do you do it, this one in the center? This one in the center? Good job, babe. Wait, I think you're supposed to say that.
Now we're getting too close to our fingers, and even I don't like that.
So I've been
There you
using
go,
this one.
now set it down.
I cannot believe that I've been.
I don't think I should.
They'll eat it. Okay, it looks like most of you guys have done that. Now switch knives with somebody across from you and do the same thing with the other style of knife. You already did that? Sit tight and we'll keep chops going.
I've done it already. Discovered that earlier.
201. Knife skills 201. Yeah. Nice job, folks. You're getting it.